Good afternoon. It is truly an honor to be here with you on behalf of the North Carolina Association of Educators, and in particularly, I feel just particularly honored to be on this panel discussion with high-quality teaching environments. I would like to introduce our very distinguished panelists. Our first one here is Suzette Curry. She's a teacher activist and a national board certified teacher at Lacy Elementary School here in Wake County. She teaches second grade there, and she has for 8 years, and has served as a grade chair for 3 years, and also on the Response to Intervention Committee for 2 years. She helped organize the teacher walk-in held at Lacy and spoke to an Aim Higher North Carolina assembly in February. She and her husband, Chris Acree, have 3 children. She's got a daughter at Appalachian State, go Mountaineers, a son who is a pirate at East Carolina University, and a daughter at Martin Middle School. Suzette is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. That's a proud Seahawk, right?
That's right.
Okay. Yes, let's give her a round of applause. We also have a distinguished professional development partner here, and one that in Guilford County I know we work closely with when I was in the Human Resources Department. This is Alicia Daughtry. She leads partnerships and professional learning at the Center for Teaching Quality, or CTQ, a national nonprofit organization that's based in Carrboro, North Carolina. Alicia helps teachers develop each other's capacity as leaders and helps non-teachers understand why that's so important to our students in schools. She leads CTQ's efforts to support teachers' learning and growth as leaders and advocates for her profession. In addition to coordinating virtual learning opportunities for teachers throughout the CTQ network, she also provides direct support to teams of teacher leaders in Florida. Before coming to CTQ, Alicia spent nearly a decade in the Washington, D.C. area, where she worked in policy advocacy and analysis, community organizing, training, and also philanthropy. She holds a Master of Public Policy MPP degree from Duke University. I'm particularly proud to introduce Karyn Dickerson, who is a colleague of mine from Guilford County Schools, and is also the 2013-14 North Carolina Teacher of the Year, and has done so phenomenally. She just happens to also be a National Board Certified English teacher at Grimsley High School, yeah, go Whirlies, right? And in Greensboro, and she taught English in grades 9 through 12, including recovery inclusion, advanced placement, and the international baccalaureate classes. Outside of the classroom, she has served on Grimsley's leadership team, mentored English teacher interns from local universities, and coached the Grimsley varsity's women's tennis team to the state 4A state championship in 2011. She is also an English methods instructor at Guilford College, and she graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a BA, Tar Heels, right? And honors and highest distinction in English, and she was inducted into Phi Beta Kappa. She also graduated with a master's of philosophy and with distinction in Romanticism and Forms of Modernity from the University of Glasgow, Scotland. I got all of that out, Karyn. And she is a Rotary International Ambassador Scholar. And last but surely not least is Helen Sunny Ladd. She is the Edgar Thompson Professor of Public Policy Studies and Professor of Economics at Duke University. And I have to get a shout out to the Blue Devils too, right? Be fair. She is, most of her current research focuses on topics in education, including school accountability, parental choice, and market-based reforms such as charter schools, school finance, and teacher labor markets. With colleagues at Duke, she's explored the relationship between teacher credentials and student test scores, and the effects of accelerating algebra, school segregation, and the effects of early childhood initiatives. She is a co-editor of the Handbook of Research on Educational Finance and Policy, and is the co-author of books on school choice in New Zealand and school reform in post-apartheid South Africa. She is past president of the Association of Public Policy Analysis and Management and a member of the National Academy of Education. Wow, let's give all these folks another round of applause. And we will follow the same format. First, we will hear from Suzette Curry, our teacher activist at Lacy Elementary School.
Thank you. How many teachers do I have out here? Great. How many students do I have out there? At one time or another, let me add that. Good afternoon. My name is Suzette Curry, and I am one of the over 90,000 public school teachers here in the state of North Carolina, and parent to 3 children educated in the state. I'm speaking here today to lend a voice to the educators who strive daily to educate our students. I am not here to condemn past or present political leaders. This should not be a political issue or about partisan politics. I challenge our elected officials to end the dialogue of blame. We have to work together to make positive changes. I'm here to challenge you. You all need to understand the realities of teachers in this state and draw your own conclusions. That's what I do. I am a teacher. Last week, during an Earth Day assembly, several of my second graders were overly demonstrating their enthusiasm for saving planet Earth. With a laser beam focus, I was able to transform my young charges back to worthy assembly patrons. A voice behind me asked, "What is it like to hold that kind of power?" And I knew what she meant. It was the power of respect. The power with just one look brings civility back to 7-year-olds. Respect. You all have that power as well. You know the importance of establishing an environment of mutual respect, whether it's in the classroom or in your workplace. You've also given that respect. Take a moment and think of the teachers over your lifetime that have earned that respect from you. Chances are this was not your favorite teacher or the class where you were most successful. My guess, it was the teachers who challenged you or who demanded more of you. One of those teachers for me was Mrs. Morgan. Back when the police and the Go-Go's ruled the airways, she did her best to teach me about Shakespeare, and she forced me to read Pride and Prejudice. I was actually certain she had a personal vendetta out against me. She took a letter grade off for every single run-on sentence that I wrote. It took me years in freshman English here at NC State to fully appreciate her and her blasted red pen. She was tough. She believed in us more than we believed in ourselves. But that's what teachers do, no matter where they teach. Public, private, or charter schools. Please keep in mind that no matter how you pay for it or what you call it, schools require teachers. Earlier this year, President Obama visited North Carolina to announce the development of, and I'm going to have to read this, the Next Generation Power Electronics Institute, headquartered here at NC State. It is a $140 million partnership to develop the next generation of energy-efficient electronic chips and devices. Governor Pat McCrory thanked the president for recognizing North Carolina as a place where the future of advanced technology can and will be developed. North Carolina has the brainpower and the talent to develop the next generation of high-tech energy sources. Where did that brainpower come from? Our university system is a national and international sought-out education. 88% of the incoming freshmen here at NC State graduated from North Carolina high schools. Without a proper K-12 educational foundation, it would be impossible to develop the next generation of semiconductors or nuclear monitoring devices. It is incomprehensible to think that this was possible without the Mrs. Morgans in each student's educational journey. The children sitting in classrooms today will not grow into the future engineers and developers of these advanced technologies if their teachers are working 2 and 3 jobs after their school day to make ends meet. Somewhere along the way, our current and past lawmakers have forgotten how they have arrived at this place of influence. It was through their teachers. While we continue to hold the respect of our students, we do not hold the respect of the policymakers of this state. That is evident daily by the headlines and personally by my annual salary, which has not seen a change since 2008, although I have 6 additional years on my license and countless hours of continuing education. This is true for every teacher. But as I said, I represent over 90,000 teachers. I have heard from many sharing the impact of no longer having their step increases. This is from just one teacher. This is my 5th year teaching, and in that time, I have earned my Master's of Education and National Board Certification. I love the content I teach. I love working with middle school students, and the work I do is very satisfying. Let me add that from all the teachers I've spoken with, they all feel that way. I am married to a former teacher, and we have 1 child. During the 5 years I taught, I watched the purchasing power of my salary erode away. Between our mortgage and the rising cost of everything, my family is unable to make ends meet each month. My wife and I tutor Monday through Friday. The next part of my story is more difficult for me to write. In November, we investigated the cost of an insurance plan through the ACA due to the exorbitant cost of insuring our family through the state health plan. During the application process, our application was referred to Medicaid due to our income level. Refusing to enroll my family in Medicaid, we enrolled in a plan that offered greater coverage than the state health plan at nearly half the cost. We've worked very hard. We've cut every possible expense from our budget. However, after realizing that cutting off our cable, home phone, and eliminating every non-essential expenditure, it wasn't going to be enough. We made the difficult decision to apply for food stamp assistance. The entire experience of applying, receiving, and using food stamps has been incredibly humbling. For my entire life, I thought that people who received food stamps were lazy freeloaders and needed to work harder. That's changed. Now I realize that I'm the lazy freeloader. I don't believe it's a ridiculous idea as a teacher that I should be paid a salary that doesn't require me to work a second job and keeps my family off public assistance. That was one teacher I heard from. There are many stories like that out there. But as I stated from the beginning, I am not here to blame past or present political leaders for this debacle. As a matter of fact, I would like to thank, personally, Pat McCrory, Tom Tillis, and Phil Berger. Thank you. Because you see, I am a registered Republican, and I put them in office. And while I have been disappointed as a voter, their legislative actions have accomplished the task of spotlighting the travesty and lack of respect for teachers in this state. And we have found our voice. Back in 2008, the Democrats in office froze teacher salaries as a response to the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. The freeze was never meant to be permanent, people. Now the economy is improving. Wages are going up. But we remain in 2008. No step increase. We're racing to the top, trying to leave no child left behind. Our lawmakers are using these stagnated numbers as a pay standard. It is continually written that the average teacher's salary is $46,000. Let me just tell you, apparently I am way below average. I do not know where this number came from. None of us will ever get to $46,000 because there is no increase. We make exactly what we made in 2008, but we live in 2014. 2 weeks ago, Wake County announced the mass exodus of teachers mid-year. One school is losing over 25% of their teaching staff. More than 50% of the staff at my school has a second and some a third job. That's true for many schools. Teachers are not leaving to become unemployed. Other states and companies are gladly benefiting from what North Carolina is neglecting. Today, we're here participating in keeping North Carolina public schools strong. The backbone of our education system, the direct service providers are our teachers. North Carolina is failing them, and this will result in a failing school system. Do not fail us. Do not fail the future of this state. It is up to all of us to make a difference in the lives of our children, our future. Support North Carolina public school teachers so they can support themselves. Thank you.
Wow, amazing. And I was looking at the text that I got last night from a reporter from WNC here about the announcement of the $460 million shortfall and the announcement of the budget. And she wanted to know what our thoughts were. And I said, we were saying this was going to happen when we knew that we had a huge tax break for billionaires and corporations. So now we do ask our General Assembly, where are your priorities now? It's up to you to make public education a priority this session. All right, let's hear from the North Carolina Teacher of the Year, Karyn Dickerson.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here today and for your support of our public schools. You know, when we first started discussing this topic for the panel of a high-quality teaching environment, the descriptor that you see in your program, ingredients, kept running through my mind. As someone who enjoys cooking and experimenting in the kitchen, I decided to put together a little recipe for a high-quality teaching environment for us here today. Now, you'll notice that my recipe does not have exact measurements because each community in our state needs to find the mix that works best for them. But these are the necessary ingredients to make that environment one that will attract and retain our top teachers. First of all, we need 1 part increased morale. We need 1 part a culture of respect. And we need infinite heapings of opportunities for our teachers. Opportunities to be leaders, opportunities to collaborate, and opportunities for necessary support for our teachers and our students. Now, the first part of this recipe for success, Suzette wonderfully touched on, the issue of teacher morale. As a North Carolina Teacher of the Year, I've spent the past year traveling the state. Sure, I've given a lot of speeches, but more importantly, I've listened to the voices of the teachers in our state, and their morale is abysmal. They are frustrated. These are teachers who love working with students, and they came into the profession to do just that. They want to stay in the classroom, but they will not stay if they do not feel respected and valued. We're in a state of educational crisis in North Carolina right now. With so many changes to education recently, we're caught in this perfect storm of education reform. And I'm actually someone who believes that some changes are necessary to improve our public schools. But notice I said improve, not fix, because our public schools are not broken. We have to be thoughtful with our changes and give the dust some time to settle before we move on to the next set of changes. And in order to move education forward, perhaps most importantly, we have to hear from the educators who are experienced, trained, and passionate about giving our students the best education possible. We need the voices of teachers at the table, teachers like you who are here today, and the teachers you work with in your schools, because they're the ones who best understand what we need in our individual schools, in our communities, and in our state. Now, in order to provide this atmosphere of respect, we have to change the way we view the teaching profession. Time and time again, I hear teachers tell me, I can't do this or I can't do that because I'm just a teacher. Just a teacher? We're talking about the people who work with our students every day, who want nothing more than to see our children succeed. There's no just to it. They are amazing individuals who deserve to be treated as such. And in order to get this respect, as Suzette said, you're going to have to look at compensation and the necessary funding to help our students in schools. As much as I hate to say it, money talks. And we are a capitalist society. You see, where we put our money shows us what we value. So we need to show that we value teachers and we value students and their education by investing in both of them. They should be priorities if we really want to have a high-quality teaching environment. Now, this notion of respect does not end with compensation. It perhaps just as importantly or more importantly also provides opportunities for teacher leadership and being treated like a professional. Productive, successful businesses rely on collaboration, to look at the problems that exist within those businesses, to find solutions, and to look for ways to move forward from there. We hear teaching compared to a business model time and time again, but if we're going to make that comparison, let's first and foremost treat teachers as professionals, or we can't compare them to a business model if they're not treated as such. We need to eliminate this obsession with competition in the teaching profession and instead focus on how we can work together to better the success for all of our students. Now, in order to work together, we need these opportunities for leadership. We need leaders within our schools, teacher leaders, who can help facilitate these critical conversations. And I don't mean just one teacher leader in a school. We need several teacher leaders in schools, teachers who know their pedagogy, know their content, and know their school population. And then together, they can facilitate conversations to see students grow. You shouldn't have to leave and become an administrator to move up and advance in your career. Teachers need to be given those opportunities for leadership within their schools where they can still work with their students that they love so dearly. Now, in light of this debate concerning morale, respect for the profession, collaboration, leadership, and needed supports, the previous State Teachers of the Year and the National Network of State Teachers of the Year put together a white paper that is entitled Reimagining Teaching: 5 structures to transform the profession. And I see good students out there writing it down, so I'm going to say it one more time for you. It is entitled Reimagining Teaching: 5 structures to transform the profession. This white paper is informed by research and examines the ideological debate that compares the teaching profession to other professions. But what I love about this paper is that it argues you can't adopt models from other professions until you first examine what is missing in the teaching profession that prevents it from being treated like the other professions. And they believe that there are 5 structures we need to add to the teaching profession before we can start to make any comparisons to a business model. They want to help create an educator-developed framework around which district, state, and federal policies can be developed to support what educators have determined is most important in the teaching profession. And these 5 interconnected critical structures for a quality teaching environment include: 1, actionable feedback to inform practices. Teachers don't mind observations. We welcome them. We want to keep learning and keep growing. We are lifelong learners. However, too often, observations simply become evaluations to rank teachers and to create that nasty atmosphere of competitiveness that stifles growth within a school. Instead, those observations need to be about what teachers can do to improve. They should be using data to inform teacher choice for professional development and to inform the way that the entire school can work together to meet the needs of their students. Number 2, we need professional career continuums. Whether it's a ladder or a lattice model, it doesn't matter, but we need opportunities for choice within the teaching profession where those teachers don't have to leave and become administrators. They can still work with their students. Number 3, we need distributed leadership models. If you look at the business model, many businesses have moved away from this top-down focus on how we can manage a business itself. Teaching is still very much top-down. We have 1, maybe 3 leaders within a school. Why not pull from the wealth of talent and expertise that we have with the teachers in our school to have a distributed leadership model? Research actually supports this. Studies like the Irreplaceables and studies from Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania reveal that opportunities for leadership are one of the #1 reasons why high-quality teachers leave the profession, because there are not opportunities for that. Number 4, we need collaborative practice. We need to examine our school schedules to allow opportunities for horizontal collaboration across grades or content areas, as well as for vertical collaboration from one grade to the next and from one subject to the other. Collaboration allows time to share best practices, and I know that I am a better teacher because of the conversations I have with my peers. Finally, we need our own set of teacher-created guiding principles for the profession. Other professions have created their own guiding principles, and we need the same. But the key is that this must be created and generated by educators who know what we need to do in our profession, and then let's turn our focus on accountability to the very principles that teachers know to be most critical within our schools. If we can have all of these ingredients, mix them together, then this magic recipe will create a high-quality environment for all of our teachers and for all of our students. Thank you.
Did we not make a fantastic choice for North Carolina Teacher of the Year? I'll pat myself on the back. I've been on the committee for the past 2 years, but Karyn has blown us away this year. Not only is she a leader on best instructional practice, but she too is an activist for those 95,000 teachers and most importantly our 1.5 million students. Thank you so much, Karyn. All right, moving right along. Let's hear from Alicia Daughtry and our professional development partner from CTQ. Come on up.
So I'm looking out across the room and it's just about the end of the day and I'm thinking, wow, this is like every school and every classroom I've ever been in. As the day goes on, more and more people slip out thinking no one's going to notice and everybody's clustered at the back of the room. So thanks to all of you who are still here. I'm sorry? Okay. Thanks to all of you who are still here with us. And I just wanted to thank both Suzette and Karyn for setting the table so beautifully for a couple of things that I wanted to share with all of you. I work at the Center for Teaching Quality. We are a national teacher leadership nonprofit based right here in Central North Carolina. We have the great privilege of working to connect, ready, and mobilize teacher leaders across the country on behalf of their profession and on behalf of the students and schools that that profession serves. one of the great joys that I have is in working with a national and now an international network of about 5,200 teacher leaders all across the United States and in 9 other countries beyond it. And the work that we do is focused on a couple of things. We help teacher leaders figure out ways to take what they already know how to do so well for their own students and inside their own classrooms, and figure out how to apply that at the systems level to create the change that all of our schools, districts, and states need. That's first. We also spend a great deal of time figuring out from those bright spot lessons that these teacher leaders are able to create, what can we learn to help teach others about the right way, the most promising way to approach education change in this country that's sustainable and that's meaningful and that's going to get results for every single community. So a couple of things that I wanted to share with you all. We are getting ready in about 2 weeks to release a report that represents the work of 7 teacher leaders from all over the globe, from right here in 3 different districts in the United States, as well as from Shanghai, from Finland, and from Singapore. And these teachers spent a great deal of time comparing notes and visiting other countries to learn what it was that these countries did differently and what made high-achieving systems work better than any others in the world. And here's a little bit of what they found. These may in fact be the secrets to some of the recipe elements that Karyn shared with us a few minutes ago. First of all, time. I don't think it's any secret that if you ask a teacher what he or she does not have enough of, the unanimous answer will be time. It's the thing that national surveys are showing is holding us back in implementation and alignment with the Common Core. It's the thing that holds us back on being thoughtful about how we evaluate teachers and how we assess students. And it's the thing really that at the end of the day has held back and hamstrung reform after reform after reform that was so well intentioned yet so poorly executed. This really can be done. One of the challenges that we face, though, has something to do with not just how much time we have. No one is arguing for a longer school day. Many of the top performing nations around the world are in school no longer than American students and teachers are. What makes a difference is how the time is used. For example, you'll see there's something that was handed around that looks a little bit like a schedule block, because it is, and it's a comparative of teachers in 6 different international school systems. And one of the things you'll notice is that the United States teachers, first and foremost, have infinitely more student contact time on a daily basis. US teachers spend well over 80% of their time working directly with students, leaving very little time for professional learning, for collaboration, for planning about how to individualize instruction to meet students' needs. All of the things that research says is going to make those teachers' practice better and stronger and more aligned to the students' needs in the long run. Meanwhile, in our international counterparts, you see that they have a lot more time devoted to that, but that's not all. They also have more clustered time. It's not the one-off professional development session crammed in at the end of the school day or stuck into the 30 minutes that you might have available during a planning period. It's blocks of time when teachers can sit down, be thoughtful about what they are learning, and think with their colleagues about how to apply it, not just a quick hit and run on student data. Another key element has to do with relevance. And this is one of the things that we find professional development runs aground on a lot. We know that there are a lot of teachers in the room, so let me just ask. Raise your hand if you're a teacher. Now, leave your hand up if you're a teacher. And most of the professional development you have received in the last year, I won't even make it your whole career, make it easy. Most of the professional development you've received in the last year has been really relevant to the content area you teach and to the students you serve. Okay, you may not be able to see it, but there are no hands up anymore. And that hurts me. So, and this is the challenge, right? We're being told we have to differentiate instruction. We have to be able to serve all of the students, as one of the earlier panels was discussing. We have to do it in a way that meets higher standards, that encompasses students who are speaking more languages at home than any generation of public school students in this country ever has before. And we're being asked to do it with years and years and years of PD on fall risks or how to use a graphing calculator, rather than thinking about adapting actual content to the needs of actual kids. And there are ways in which this is being done. In Shanghai, for example, they have a system by which they identify teachers who are poised to serve basically as action researchers. And what they do is they go around, they study best practices in their colleagues' classroom, and then help other people adopt and adapt those practices to their own classroom contexts and to their own content areas. This is being done, not surprisingly, or maybe it is. Where do you think this started? It's being practiced in Shanghai. Yeah, and I'm seeing a couple people say right here, and that's exactly true. That's an idea that they borrowed from the United States. So it is something that can be done. It's just that too often we have chosen not to execute a good idea. The third thing that I would say is really important has to do with sustainability. Okay, hands up in the air. You've seen a new education reform come into being. Okay, great. And then how many of those have gone back away? Yeah. They've all, it's the flavor of the month disease that afflicts education. And thinking about how we sustain things in terms of funding, in terms of creating positions so that it's not based on an individual personality, somebody who's able to be the superhero teacher, but on something that can actually be continued over time. That's incredibly important. And that's being done right here at home as well as around the world. In Singapore, for example, they have found ways to set aside additional space in teachers' annual school calendars. They're doing the same in Iowa. Their legislature just passed a bill a little over a year ago creating a new teacher leadership and compensation system. It develops for 25% of their teacher workforce, new teacher leadership positions that allow either additional time or additional compensation for teachers to institutionalize practices that they know work well in their schools and districts. It can be done. We're spending a lot of time at the Center for Teaching Quality thinking about how we can apply some of these lessons learned, and also why it is so hard to make these things happen at the systems level. There are 7 key clusters of conditions that we've discovered need to be in place to prevent these things from being the occasional case study, the single exception, and make things exceptional rather than exceptions at the systems level. And here are some of what those are. First of all, there has to be a shared vision and strategy for what we want, and that's hard. In public education, I think a lot of times we jump right to the what and the how, and we skip over the conversation around why. What are our values, and what are we asking our public schools and its educators to achieve? There needs to be a strong commitment by organizational leadership to make these things happen. This is a key element of sustainability, and it's also important not to tell our teachers that you're expected to stand up, to bring yourself to the table, and that the job of being a teacher leader is on you. It is on all of us to make space for more leaders in every single district and in every single schools. We all own that responsibility. Resources are critical. I think the finance panel hit a lot of the key issues right on the nose. It's also important to think about work structures, and that includes the politics around who gets to make decisions, and it includes the relationships among the people. Education is not an individual enterprise. It's something that we do collectively. I think some of the stories that Karyn and Suzette shared about the ways in which they've interacted with other teachers and relied on them for support, for guidance, for expertise over the years really speaks deeply to that. Most importantly, all of this adds up to one critical element that we can't overlook, an orientation toward improvement. I want to thank all of you for demonstrating that here today. your presence on a Saturday, on a beautiful spring Saturday, really speaks a lot to how important education continues to be here in our state of North Carolina. It's my home state. I came back here after years away in part because I wanted to be sure that I was giving back to the community and to the schools many of the opportunities that were given to me. I know you all share that goal, and I just really thank you for your commitment to that. We invite you to come visit our website at teachingquality.org. The report from our global teacher team will be released in just about 2 weeks from now. I also invite each of you to join us as part of our virtual community for teacher leaders and those who support them. It's called the CTQ Collaboratory. You can join for free on our website, and if you are a teacher or another educator, I hope you'll also explore some of our lab spaces, which are open virtual platforms for collaboration, as well as opportunities to get connected with other educators around the state and around the world. We'd love to have your expertise and help share what you already know how to do so well. Thanks.
And we are so fortunate to have the Center for Teacher Quality here in North Carolina and adding the support there. And I've got another adjective to put in front of you too, and that is, yes, activists. So thank you so much for your remarks and the support that you provide for public school teachers. All right, last but surely not least is our public policy expert here from Duke University, Helen Sunny Ladd. Please give her a warm welcome.
So I'm delighted to be here, but I'm also very aware of the time. And as a teacher, I believe very much in having interaction with the audience. So I'm going to try to be short so we make sure we leave some time for questions so we can end promptly at 3. I'd like to make just 2 pretty obvious points based on my own research that reinforce some of the points that have been made here, and then I'd like to end briefly with a comment on values, which Alicia mentioned. I have some additional thoughts on values. So the 2 initial points based on my own research that draws heavily on North Carolina data are first a point about teacher experience. I must admit I get quite concerned when I hear policymakers send a signal that it's fine to have novice teachers or inexperienced teachers, and it doesn't matter if more experienced teachers leave the profession. I'm here to say that one of my latest papers focuses explicitly on the question of teacher experience and what we know about how experience relates to effectiveness of teachers. If you ask educators, any of you in the audience, I'm sure you'd agree that there's opportunities to learn on the job, and that all of you are better now or were better than you were when you first entered the teaching profession. We all know that. And even economists, my colleagues, I'm an economist by training, my colleagues know that novice teachers are far less effective their first couple of years than they will be a few years after teaching. I'm here to say that that learning on the job doesn't just go on for the first 2, 3, or 4 years, which is what some economists think and say, but it in fact goes on continually. My own latest research with a colleague at Duke suggests or shows that teachers continue to learn on the job through at least 12 to 15 years of experience, and then learning may level off, but those more experienced teachers still end up being far more effective than teachers in their first or second year of teaching. That should make sense to all of you. Teaching is a difficult profession. It's much more difficult than being a carpenter carving a piece of wood where the wood is static and the carpenter can do his thing on that piece of wood. Teachers are working with young children with their own motivations and aspirations and behaviors, good and bad. That's hard work for teachers. And so I'm delighted to be able to just assert with some confidence, based on my own research, based on North Carolina data, with some reasonably sophisticated empirical modeling, that teachers do continue to learn on the job. What that means from a policy-making point of view is we need to give opportunities for teachers to continue to grow and to learn, and we need to do everything we can in this state to keep those experienced teachers here in North Carolina. Now, I'm not saying that every experienced teacher is better than every inexperienced teacher. My analysis is based on statistical analysis, so it applies to averages. But the point should be clear. We would be doing this state a serious disservice if we let go or scare away or don't work to retain teachers who are experienced and who can continue to learn on the job. So that's my first point. Second point just has to do with how we keep effective, experienced teachers on the job. How do we retain them in schools in North Carolina? And I've done a number of work over the studies over the years related to this question. One I'll just talk briefly about relates to salaries. Obviously a topic of import here in North Carolina right now. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to have a salary schedule. We need a level of salaries and a salary schedule that is designed to keep experienced teachers here in North Carolina in the workforce. And given that teachers are professionals, they're college graduates who can earn rising salaries elsewhere in other professions, we do need salaries that will increase. Now, I haven't done a lot of work on the salary issue. I've done some in a slightly different context. But one of the reasons I know salaries matter so much in this regard is just the simple evidence that so many teachers in this state have gotten master's degrees and also have worked hard to become national board certified teachers. Now, many teachers are doing either one of those activities in order to become better teachers. But my guess is that a lot of the teachers who have gone ahead and gotten master's degrees have done that because they wanted higher salaries. They needed higher salaries in order to be able to continue working in this state. Now, I mention this specifically because this morning Representative Stam referred to the fact that he had seen some studies that suggest that teachers with master's degrees aren't any more effective than teachers without master's degrees. And he didn't name any studies, but I suspect had you pushed him, he would have mentioned one of my studies with various colleagues, because some of my work does show that there isn't a systematic, positive and strong relationship between master's degrees and effectiveness measured in the form of higher test scores for teachers. That is true, but I would be the first person to say that doesn't mean we can just get rid of the salary bump for master's degrees and not put something else in its place, either a more sensible program for professional development that would lead to higher salaries or higher salaries in general. So my point here is that it may well make sense to rethink the policy toward master's degrees, but only if we're going to replace it with some other way for teachers to increase their salaries as they progress in this profession. The other part of the keeping teachers here in the workforce has to do with the working environment. And there have been references to the working environment throughout the day. As I think about the working environment of teachers, I think about two things. First is the mix of students in the school or the classroom in which the teachers are teaching. And we all know that it's more challenging to teach in a school or a classroom where there are lots of disadvantaged kids coming to school, perhaps not having eaten fully or less rested, not having done their homework, all sorts of reasons. And that is part of the working conditions and the working environment that many teachers are grappling with. And my own view is we should be paying higher salaries for teachers teaching in schools with large proportions of disadvantaged students. The other part of the teaching environment is what I would refer to as working conditions. And you all are familiar with the North Carolina Working Conditions Survey that's done every 2 years. I must admit, I look forward to seeing what's in the latest Working Conditions Survey, and I will look at that with interest. I have done some research on an earlier Working Conditions Survey, the survey that was completed in 2006, trying to look at the relationship between teachers' perceptions of their working conditions and their plans or intentions to leave a school or leave a district or leave the profession. And those working conditions, as perceived by teachers, matter. So if you think about two schools with the same mix of students, so the same difficulty and challenges in teaching the students, but one has working conditions that, as perceived by teachers, are more favorable than another, the one with the more favorable working condition is more likely to be able to keep those teachers there. Now, we are also able to sort of unpack what teachers mean by working conditions, and there's a lot that goes into this, but the key thing is leadership. Leadership very broadly defined, as Karyn and Alicia were talking about it, sort of a distributed leadership in the school, which includes some support, which includes time, includes recognition of the challenges that teachers face. So all I'm saying is what comes from that research is this importance of paying attention to working conditions. So let me just get to my very final point about values. I am currently writing a book that I'm very excited about, and the title is Educational Goods, Values, Evidence, and Decision Making. Now, you haven't heard the term educational goods because it's a term that my authors and I have made up because we think we need some additional language to talk about what is valued in education. Right now, we primarily have the term student achievement or student test scores. Educational goods to us are the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and dispositions that will enable a student to lead a flourishing life and to contribute to the flourishing of others. And that's a very abstract concept, but to us it means things like developing the capacity for children children as they grow to participate in the labor market, to participate in our democracy, to have good interpersonal relations, to value the moral dignity of others, and to lead to personal fulfillment. If we have this new language, this new term, educational goods, knowledge, skills, attitudes, and dispositions that will allow us children to lead a flourishing life and to contribute to the flourishing of others, we may broaden our view of teaching and lead to a more successful education system in this state. Thank you.
And North Carolina is certainly a stronger place to have your expertise, Sonny, at the table here. Let's give all our panelists a round of applause for the great work. We do have about 6 minutes left for questions for these distinguished panelists, so please make your way up front, and we'd love to hear from you. All right, now. Who's going to jump at that one? Okay.
So did we get questions?
The last, I think it was a two-part question.
Why don't you start?
Well, I kind of view that as a two-part question. So for the first part, to the teacher who is fostering that whole child development, you tell them keep it up. Because that's critical. Teaching our students critical thinking, helping them wrestle with the difficulties they're going to face in their lives, that to me, in my personal philosophy, is just as important. Well, really, it's more important than just a test score. So you tell them to keep doing that, first of all. In terms of encouraging experience over experimentation, I think that we do have to look thoughtfully at the changes that we implement in our schools. As I said before, I think that as human beings, we all know that we are at our best when we are looking at ways to improve, ways to grow. But we need to look at ways to improve and to grow by learning from the experience of those educators who have done so much and worked with our children and understand what the needs are in that community. So that's why I think that the voices of teachers need to be at the table. So it shouldn't be experimentation. It should be a collaborative effort to improve our schools.
And the only thing I would add to that is I don't think it's experienced teachers versus inexperienced teachers. You need both. We want to have new, energetic people coming into the profession, but we want to have experienced teachers there who've seen lots of different situations in schools and who can mentor the younger teachers and continue the mission of the school and who has the history. So it's not one or the other.
Any other comments from our panelists? All right, next question.
Good afternoon. My name is Guy Hill. I teach English in Harder County Schools. And I have a question for Dr. Ladd. According to your research, is there a measurable difference between teachers that have a master's degree and teachers who have national board certification when it comes to student test scores?
So in my research, based on North Carolina data, we always do find a positive coefficient on the national board certification. So what that means is just we find evidence that there is a link between being nationally board certified and being an effective teacher, where effective teacher in that context is measured specifically just by gains in student test scores. And I want to emphasize that because in my teacher experience work that I just mentioned earlier, we look not only at the effectiveness of teachers in terms of gains in test scores, but we look at a number of other measures. We find that on average, teachers with more experience are better at reducing student absenteeism, in encouraging students to read at home, and to have fewer offenses in school. So I want to have a broader measure. But on average, if your question is also asking about the master's degrees, we have not found a lot of evidence in the elementary and middle school for a clear, systematic relationship between having a master's degree and effectiveness in the classroom in terms of test scores. At the high school level, though, we do find some of those positive effects.
All right. Are there further questions? Follow-up.
Because nobody else came up with another question. Again, for Dr. Ladd. If students are allowed to transfer out of their district, do you foresee segregation becoming a problem that may resurface?
So I worry a lot about the relationship between parental choice of schools and segregation. My husband, who was the moderator earlier, Ted Fisk, and I have looked at school choice plans in New Zealand, and we've written a lot about choice in the United States. And wherever you have parental choice, you're going to end up with more segregation than you otherwise would have. Now, that doesn't mean you don't want any parental choice, because we all know that higher income families already have a lot of choice, and we'd like to give, and it makes sense to try to expand choice for other families. But we have to do that carefully and with appropriate controls, because there are other values at stake. And I would argue that having racially balanced or economically balanced schools is another value that we should maintain in our minds as we're making decisions about various policy options.
All right. Let's give another round of applause for our panelists and welcome Yvonne Brannon back up to the stage.